My guest today is Kyle Seyler. He is the Senior Product Marketing Manager at Autodesk. Let's jump into the conversation. Welcome to the Bridging the Gap podcast. Kyle, thanks so much for taking the time to join us here during AU this year.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Todd.
Yeah, so can you start by kind of giving your backstory? How'd you get started into the fabulous world of construction?
It's a long story, but maybe I'll just do the beginning and very end. Actually, I studied music a long time ago, and you know, no surprise, it's actually really hard to make money in music, so I had to find some other gigs on the side. So I swung the hammer for a little bit, doing some finishing work in residential construction in like the hot Tucson summers. I also had a job at a commercial real estate company where I had to learn how to do AutoCAD to draft up the prospectuses, and those two things were happening around the same time. I sort of abandoned that whole track for a long time and got into marketing. Hardcore. Fast forward, I'm at a mixer in San Francisco at the Autodesk Gallery, and I'm looking around at all the projects that are there, and I'm like, this is the most amazing company I've ever seen. What company is it? Oh, it's the company that did AutoCAD a long time ago that I used.
Yeah.
I put it out there in the universe, Todd, and it came right back at me. Someone gave me a call to join the company. I originally started on the education team, helping get our software into different schools. By the way, shout out to the education team because they recently got Autodesk Construction Cloud available to schools. But then, I'm a product marketer at heart. I wanted to get into product marketing, and that's when I got into the construction team. So I've been there for about 4 years now. I'm focused mostly on BIM, on our BIM capabilities, but I lead a team of folks who do things like project management, field collaboration, data, and AI.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Very cool. It's a cool journey, and you're not the first person that say that they started in music that ended up in contact with
marketing,
maybe in the marketing niche, but yeah, that's very cool. So it's more common than maybe you might think.
Yeah, I think so.
That's awesome. So making informed decisions. Okay, let's kind of dive into that. How is Autodesk Construction Cloud helping to make this a really crucial process priority for people out there?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things that's happened in the last 5 years, we're like we're headed through like a renaissance in construction, especially in construction technology. That's really great. There's a lot of awesome solutions out there. There's a lot more data than we ever had in the past, but it can lead to a lot of data that's hard to consume, right? And so for us in Autodesk Construction Cloud, our focus is sort of helping folks cut through the noise so that they can find the right information that they need to do that job, to make the best decisions they can, regardless of their role or their levels of expertise.
How do you manage to go about cutting through that noise so that they can get the information quickly and not just be overwhelmed by the data coming at them?
Yeah, I mean, the way that I see it is like there are two sets of people within an organization. There are people who configure, these are the people who they set up all the standards that they need for the organization. They're BIM managers who might curate models or something like that. And then there are the end users, and those end users are the folks who I just need to see what I need to see today, and there's nothing beyond that. And so as long as we can sort of create that configuration space, and then sort of the experience where people just go into the product and see exactly what they need to see, I think we're winning if we're doing that kind of work.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. So Autodesk Assistant seems super cool. Mm-hmm. To tell the listening audience here, why should they be excited about Autodesk Assistant right now?
Well, beyond that, it's AI. Autodesk Assistant, we teased this out last year at AU, and it's this concept that you can basically ask your specifications questions. And for folks out there who have dealt with spec books, it's binders upon binders that you're thumbing through to get answers. Last year, we brought specifications into the product and used AI sort of to sort and organize those specs. And now we're able to, through this Autodesk Assistant beta, we're able to help people sort of ask questions of their specs in, natural language in the way that they normally would. And they're able to get back responses. They're able to generate lists. They're able to sort of generate first drafts of correspondence out to the rest of the company. So it's a really cool tool just to sort of remove that unnecessary time of searching through stuff and thumbing through those massive binders.
So you were mentioning it a bit there with the natural language aspect of it. Can you go into maybe a bit more specifics on how that's really helping to simplify the workflow and process of people?
Yeah, I mean, if you think about even the progression of search over time, way back in Google search days, you kind of had to know really what you were looking for and when you're putting in the search query. If you're using any sort of, I won't name drop any other products here, but if you're using any sort of repository, a lot of times you have to know the keywords precisely of what you're looking for. Natural language is the same stuff that we're all using today in AI. It's just sort of that we're applying that to your specification. So you can ask it in an informal tone. You can ask it with sort of sporadic thoughts. You can totally omit the keywords that you might normally have to search for in order to get the information that you want. And it's very sort of fluid, and it's the way that we think anyway. So it's a nice way for folks to engage with their specifications.
Reducing risk is always a big front of mind thing for construction. How does the natural language aspect of it, how does that help to reduce project risk?
Well, I think speed is a part of it. Sometimes, with these things, when you're trying to find an answer, you may find a answer, but it may not be the best answer. This technology allows you to ask the question in the way that you want to ask it based off of what's going on your project. And then it'll, sort of synthesize an answer based on what's in there, which might be different than someone who's just going through the spec book and finding the first answer that they find. So it helps to sort of bring together a big mass of information and synthesize a good response rather than individual pieces of information. I'd also say so speed is a big part of it. You're getting your answer faster. You're not having to wait and maybe missing your window of something to ameliorate whatever problem is going on.
As Autodesk Assistant becomes more integrated into processes, what's the evolution of that? What's kind of next step?
Man, I cannot tell you, but let's just say it's Autodesk Assistant, and that sort of textual analysis is a big part of our vision moving forward, right? Construction workers, they work with their hands, and they're always it's just so, in a way, we just need to reduce the amount of time that they're either thumbing through something or typing on a screen, right? So they can just get to the answer faster. That applies to specifications, but it may also apply to other things in the future. TBD.
Nice. That was a good tease. Okay. So when the conversation's around AI in construction, you obviously have the two different viewpoints, people that are super excited about it, leveraging it all the time, and then the people that are, maybe more cautious about it. How do you speak to those people to say, this is not threatening, it's not particularly scary, it's here, let's embrace it?
Yeah, I think most people are used to AI that sort of pulls from the entire corpus of the internet to find an answer. This is just pulling from the information that's in your project. So, obviously precision is really important to contractors. There's just certain things you can't get wrong, right? When we're drawing from information that's in that project, the accuracy level goes up than if you were just drawing from sort of random websites out there. I think that's a big part of it. So you don't have to be as afraid of false positives or, hallucinations or anything like that. I'd also say this is the way that we pitch it in Autodesk in general is AI is creating a first draft for you. You still have to go beyond that. And let's say, for instance, with this Autodesk Assistant thing, it might create a first draft response to your project team, but you're going to have to go back and tweak it some bit and, make it your own and that kind of thing. So, yeah, it's just a really great tool to help people get to the right answer, but also communicate out answers quickly.
Nice. So Autodesk has recently introduced the more specific kind of templates into it. I wonder if you can speak more to the templates and how they're helping on the project side of things.
Yeah, sample project templates. Great name. But they're just an effort to help people get started. When you're starting up a project, it can be really overwhelming sometimes, all of the things that you need to standardize for your company. And it just gives people a head start with that. So we have templates that are useful for GC firms in the United States, subcontractors, owners, and it'll templatize things like folder structure or, permissions on different roles or certain workflow configurations. And it just sort of helps you get to that first step, and then you can customize beyond that. We want to help people adopt technology into their day-to-day life, and this is sort of a step forward in that direction.
How does it then help on the data consistency side and to set the standards moving forward?
Yeah, absolutely. It's not only standards within your own company, but it helps set a standard across the industry too, which is kind of nice because Everyone who has Autodesk Construction Cloud has access to these standards, these folder structures and whatnot. It's nothing official, but if it at least helps propel like that standard into the industry, I think it helps quite a bit. And then once you have that sort of project template, you can replicate it on project over project over project. And that's where you're going to get that standardization across the entire business.
Very nice. How have you gone about the messaging of really being able to pull people in together, getting all the key stakeholders in one environment and really working together with that kind of interconnected and cross collaboration?
Well, there are a lot of advantages for everyone coming into one system. And one thing I'll say too, it doesn't always have to be that everyone is in the exact same hub. We have bridge technology that helps you sort of work in your own hubs, share the information that you need when you need to, and keep sort of your IP and your standards all in your own hub, and while collaborating with other folks. But there's a huge benefit to folks when they're able to collaborate in one space and pull from sort of the same set of information and use the same type of collaborative tools to use the same kind of standards. It's just going to streamline that sort of collaboration among different firms who might be typically doing things in completely different systems that require you to, download files, upload files, send an email, like that kind of stuff that people are used to, which is fine, but there's just a much faster and easier way to do it in Autodesk Construction Cloud.
Any good kind of recent examples of companies that have been able to take it from the, AI aspect all the way through and help in that collaboration side?
Ooh, I don't know of any companies that have fully adopted the AI side of it. It's new for us in this this beta that we're talking about. But I will say this, that Insight is a product that we've had in the Construction Cloud for a while, and Construction IQ actually is a sort of an AI product that exists within Autodesk Construction Cloud. That's existed for since the beginning of Autodesk Construction Cloud, and it's really that tool that helps people identify risks ahead of like when you would normally think to consider it a risk. It just draws from a corpus of information so that like it's like pings you when like there's something potentially wrong. And that's something we've had for years now. And so Autodesk has really been on the forefront of AI. A lot of our customers love that type of tech. And most of the time they don't even really realize it's AI. They're just enjoying the benefits of like getting these little notifications that you should look out for something.
Yeah, nice. Well, let's put the spotlight on specialty contractors for a moment. ACC, why should they give it a deep dive look? What's ACC have for them?
In general, specialty contractors benefit from ACC because of the collaborative aspect of it. They're just likely going to win more work if they're within the same system as a GC. But in addition, we've released some technology in Bidboard Pro called Plan Room. And that helps specialty contractors win more the right kind of work for them. So obviously there's a backlog for specialty contractors out there, but this is sort of like, what do you really want to do? Where do you see your company going? What's the growth trajectory? And Plan Room and Bidboard Pro really helps you narrow in on those kind of jobs that you want to take. It also is a really great tool if you're looking to expand your territory, because you can sort of like map out exactly where you want to go within the territory you want to go into. And then I also look at it from the other side too. For general contractors, it's a really good sort of place for you to expand your reach into specialty contractor networks. So I think it's a win-win for both.
So I want to double click on that a bit. How does it help in the relationship aspect between the specialty contractors and the GCs?
It's about, as a GC, you might be exposing certain aspects of a job that you want. And that, the people you're sending out to are interested in, for instance, those aspects because they're filtering for them and they're looking precisely for those aspects of the job. So it's like matchmaking a little bit, and that sort of builds a little bit more trust rather than a sort of a shotgun approach to finding jobs where you're just like, oh my gosh, I hope I get a job. I'll do anything. This is like, that people are being really intent on what they want. So I would say that helps a little bit.
Yeah. It allows you to shut off the desperate vibe is what you're, the clingy, be more targeted and strategic.
Yeah. Don't be clingy.
That's awesome. So what do you think is one of the maybe best kept secrets that you would like to get out there more about ACC?
Oh, I love that you asked that question. Assets is the best kept secret within ACC. I'm biased, I think. but I love assets. Over there's the asset tracking booth, and this is that concept. You can track any sort of piece of material, object, equipment throughout the life cycle. It draws this equipment directly from the design file, and you're able to sort of visualize it in 3D. So it has a progress tracking element to it, or you can see this has been installed, this is ready for testing. And you can even bundle these things up into asset systems. So I like to give the analogy that, like, okay, it's great that you know that a light bulb's been installed. Cool. But we need to know that the conduit's there, the wiring is there, the circuit box is there, all that stuff, the transformer, all that stuff is also in place to make that light bulb light up, right? Mm-hmm. And that's an asset system. And it's really great for commissioning workflows and just general quality workflows. The really super neat thing, which is happening this week, this is going to air later, yeah? So if that's the case, then we're bringing progress tracking and 3D assets to the new mobile viewer, 3D mobile viewer. So if folks are listening out there, we are floating around with that, and you can test it out. It's really cool. It's one of my favorite things out there.
That's awesome. Do they have to sign up for a special beta to get access to that? Or
it's part of a sort of a public beta, so you just basically need to flip it on.
Nice.
Yeah. So yeah, that one's really excited. I will say the other one that's pretty neat is Insight Builder. So this is where folks can like drag and drop different data elements to create their own custom dashboards directly in ACC. So imagine these BI tools out there, right? It's similar to that, but you don't need to be an analyst to work through it, and it's all based off of your data within ACC. Going back to that idea of like those folks who configure things versus those people, the end users who just need to see the right stuff. The configure person in scenario can go in and use this WYSIWYG type of builder to put all of the dashboard elements that are necessary for quality, for instance, or safety. And then they post it to the rest of the projects out there. And those people who are running those projects can keep an eye on the measures that are important for the entire company.
Nice. What's your favorite feature in ACC right now?
My favorite feature in ACC? Gosh, I mean, I did say assets. That was a big one. Asset systems is a big one. This is not a feature, but I feel like I have to call it out. Navisworks. Everyone knows about Navisworks, right? We are doing a lot more to create interoperability between Navisworks and ACC. And that's in part because each job is different. Each project team is different based on like levels of expertise. Even phases in a job are different. You might need to go from a really sort of a light lift coordination work to a heavy amount of detail, or you might have folks on your team who are a little bit more junior, or you might not even have a BIM sort of team working on a specific project who just needs something really simple. But then you go to massive projects and huge complexity, you need some sort of hybrid approach. So all that to say, creating that interoperability between Navisworks and ACC means that there are multiple ways for folks to approach coordination, depending on their background, the level of expertise, or the level of detail that they need to engage in. And that's something that we've been working on for quite a while now, but we're going to continue to work on it. Let's really plug away at that, because I think that's something that folks have been looking for, is that adaptability, the ability to customize their experience in coordination.
Yeah, very nice. So as we start to kind of broaden it out, let's look at kind of the macro trends of construction right now. Where do you see the industry going over the next couple of years here?
Yeah, I mean, we just put out an industry report that gauged some of the sentiment of general contractors out there. Despite there being a sort of a large influx of, an increase in total input costs. I think from like 2020, it's up like 40%. It's massive. But their sentiment is still high. They still have good backlogs, and they still feel like positive about things. And I think that's really encouraging. I would say that we hear a lot about sustainability, and for contractors, sustainability and running your business in a sustainable way are kind of one and the same, right? Because a lot of what we think of as sustainability happens like in the building design phase, but contractors are thinking about, okay, how do I reduce material waste? How do I reduce the amount of trips out to the job site? Those things that are beneficial for the environment and also, by the way, beneficial for your bottom line. So those two things I think are really great. Folks feeling positive despite really high input costs. And I think that is in large part because of technology, but also because of process improvement. And the other one is sustainability. And and how that actually like is really tangible in construction. And there's things you can do today to reduce that material waste, things that can do today to reduce the amount of trips out on site that really drastically reduce the amount of carbon out there.
Mm-hmm. So another big kind of macro trend is with the labor shortage and not having enough people coming in and way too many retirements and not enough people coming back behind them. How do you go about maybe breaking some of the misconception for people outside of the construction industry that there is tech here? It's an amazing industry to come into. What would you say to those people to encourage them to come into this?
Well, I want to go back to my old stomping grounds of Autodesk Education and say that team does a really good job of showing the future of construction, not only by allowing folks to use Autodesk Construction Cloud, but through curriculum and help getting programs started in different universities. I think that's a great way to showcase the future of construction. I think if I had to wave my magic wand, if we would have more sort of like trade schools in the United States, like we do in the UK, like that would be a great sort of pathway for folks to get into construction and not have to, maybe go other routes that are less desirable. I'll say this too, as we bring in more technology, like the 3D component of it, if you walk over there, there's the XR component of it. There's drones that are happening now. This stuff is getting cool. It's getting very Star Wars, which I think helps folks get into it a little bit more.
Yeah. I mean, there's even the Star Wars whole display.
Is there?
This is very cool.
I haven't seen it.
Keep walking that way. It's very cool.
Okay.
Very cool. So as we start to land the plane and wrap up, a couple rapid fire questions for you. What is the phrase modeling the future? What does that bring up in your mind?
I went back to school and I studied philosophy, so I'm going to give you the philosophical answer here.
Lay it on me.
Modeling the future, in my mind, has to do with the state of flow. Are you familiar with the state of flow? When you heard of anyways, when I talk to construction workers out there, they are so proud of some of the things that they've built, but they just are sometimes traumatized by some of the administrative and busy work that they have to do to build that thing.
Right.
And so the more we can do to just shed away all of that stuff that's painful and get folks back into that state of flow, back into sort of, the art and craft of building, I think the better. And I think technology does a lot, can help a lot, and also sometimes hurts a little bit too. But my hope is that through Autodesk Construction Cloud, we can help cut through that noise and get folks back into that state of flow.
I like it. So innovation is a big topic that we talk a lot about on the show. How would you define the word innovation?
When I think about innovation, I've heard it, explained in a couple different ways on this podcast, by the way. Huge fan, love it. Sometimes it's it's a very simple thing that can change. And I agree with that. But it's also, when I look at other companies and they roll out this really complex thing to build, and it's that's innovation too. And I would boil it down to an innovation is something that helps another person with their daily life, makes it a little bit easier somehow. And it can be that small little process change, and it can be a really massive technical type of delivery. Either way, I think it's really about helping other people do their work a little bit better or live their lives a little bit easier.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I more than agree with that. Usually those bigger ideas, it started with a simple concept that created something really big, and it's, kind of that incremental approaches.
Yeah, definitely.
By the end of that, kind of baby steps, you've landed in some place that's radically different, but it's a cool process for sure.
Absolutely.
So any major takeaways so far coming out of AU here, wrapping up day 2?
Takeaways from AU. I was talking to some colleagues just before this. I am so wowed by the construction presence here. There are a lot of construction professionals have made their way out here. I don't know if I've been here long enough to know if that's, a really recent trend, but it feels really palpable to have people out here learning about technology, learning from each other. Tomorrow I get to meet with a bunch of BIM managers, and even last night I hung out with a bunch of BIM managers. There's a big energy from construction here at AU, and I'm for that. So
yeah, I think that's one of the best things about the construction industry is the willingness to learn from each other, even competitors. Then people are so open to sharing thoughts and ideas and really helping the industry as a whole come along. That there's competition and there's a rivalry there, but there's also this kind of shared community of let's do this together and lock arms, which is cool.
Oh, definitely. And I don't know how much time you spent with BIM managers, but they are they're kind of nerdy, but they're also so cool. And, like, I love hanging out with them. I feel cooler when I hang out with them. I don't know what that says about me, but you had a guy, Brian, on this podcast a year ago, and like I was talking to him last night, and like the stuff that he's working on for his company just blows my mind. It is so awesome, and it just gets me energized on the stuff that we're building for ACC.
Yeah, there's a ton of just ridiculously smart people in construction.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Thinking a whole different playing fields. It's really fun to pick their brains and hear their idea.
Yeah, absolutely.
Where would you point them to find out more information on Autodesk Construction Cloud and all the cool new updates that have come out?
Yeah, construction.autodesk.com is our website. We post a blog there too, which has all of our most recent releases. And we have a sort of public-facing roadmap that you can look at. One of the best ways, and this goes back to the adoption component of it, is we have these product tours where if you're unsure what we mean when we say asset systems, for instance, like you can go and do a product tour, which is like an interactive way of like learning about that feature without having to have a data set, without having to have access to the product. It's a really neat way to learn about what we're releasing.
That's awesome. So final question for you. If I could give you all construction power, you could snap your fingers and innovate one thing, what would you pick to innovate?
Okay, and you're gonna ask this question. Here's the thing. I'm a big fan of delivery types that are more collaborative, right? And we tout this idea of folks getting together earlier in a project all the time, but obviously there are just ways of doing construction that don't always allow for that. So if I were to snap my fingers, I would say let's do more of these like highly collaborative ways of working together, because when you get sort of minds of different kinds together in one space, like the possibilities are really endless. So that would be my snap fingers innovation. So
I love that. More collaboration, more communication, the better. I said this, that was my last question. I like any thought on how to make that become a reality?
I mean, the more we show, for instance, like owners, the value of folks getting together earlier in the process and working together in sort of a single space or at least a federated space, they're going to say, oh, we want to push this idea of collaboration a little bit more. And I think that helps quite a bit. So we're really thinking about owners in this too. Like, what do they get out of this? And that's important to think about. And I think the more that they see the value, the more they'll encourage folks on the project team to do something more collaborative.
Yeah, more than agree with that.
Yeah.
It starts with the owners for sure.
Yeah, it does.
Well, Kyle, thanks so much for taking the time and
Todd.
joining the show today.
Yeah.